All right, this is for the Frisco City Council Place 5. Bart Crowder is the incumbent. Tim Nelson is the challenger. At this time, we will go ahead and take opening remarks. Mr. Crowder, we will start with you, sir.
All right. The trick mic here. Good morning. Thanks so much for coming out to the event today. I'm Bart Crowder. It's been my pleasure to serve in Place 5 of the Frisco City Council on your behalf the last 3 years, seeking another term. By way of a little background, I'm married to my wife Jana. We have 3 daughters in the Frisco school system in high school, middle school, and elementary levels. I understand the needs of the business community and been in the business world myself for many years. Undergraduate degree in business, followed up later by an MBA at SMU. So I certainly understand the importance of commerce and business to getting things done. In terms of my career, I'm currently serving as a managing director for the Charles Schwab Corporation, managing a large budget in a 4-state region for our company. Some of the information I want to share with you in terms of my activities, in addition to serving on the council the last 3 years, my history of civic involvement goes back many years, going back to college where I served as chairman of community service projects, later worked for the Dallas Heart Ball. After our first daughter was born, spent a few days in the neonatal care facility, joined the board of directors in fundraising to bring funds to that very important function for the hospital. In later years, more recently, coached 2 of my daughters in soccer for several seasons here in Frisco Soccer Association. So done a lot for the community, focused on specific tasks around city council. I look forward to discussing those with you, and we welcome your support for another term. Thanks so much.
Tim Nelson.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Tim Nelson, candidate for City Council Place 5, as well as JP's introducing us as the challenger. I feel like, let's get ready to rumble. But obviously, on a more civil note, I've been in Frisco since 1999. I've been privileged to be a part of this community for 12 years and have really loved every moment of it. I have my wife and 3 children, and if you know anything about, especially about young children, you'll know that their ages being 7.5, 5.5, and 21 months, you'll know that the halves are very important at this point. So if I were to call them 7 and 5, they'd be very upset. I've grown up around small businesses, and really that's the core of our community, if you really think about it. The vast majority of the people I think here work in one way or another for a small business or an independent entrepreneur. Bottom line is, my mother, she had a rubber stamp and scrapbooking store that I helped with. She had that business for 15 years. My father was a printer back in the old days with the light tables and the printing presses, and I used to help him change out all that good stuff. So, I remember those days. I also have good corporate experience. I've worked for UPS for 7 years. I was a manager. In fact, when I was a manager for UPS, I was promoted to that point at age 18. I was the youngest manager in the West LA district. And then I have additional experience in management as well as leadership with electronic data systems back the old EDS days. I also am fortunate to have some of the best leadership training there is available. And I've been able to test that under fire. I've been in the United States Army and Army Reserve for the last 22 years. And I think that's a wonderful asset, and it brings additional perspective potentially to our city council. Like Bart, I was a business major when I was an undergraduate, and I've served as a community service officer for my university for over 2 years. I think what's important is making sure that we leverage those community assets. For instance, our EDC, Jim Gandy, obviously our Chamber of Commerce, et cetera, and making sure that those people in this room have the best opportunities to succeed. And in order to have the best opportunity to succeed, we've got to work together. Thank you.
First question. We'll start with Mr. Nelson and go to Mr. Crowder. It is a 1-minute question. Please respond within 1 minute. One of my favorite quotes of all time is, "Everyone wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die." Do you see some of that sentiment today in Frisco, with no one wanting to spend any money for anything, but still wanting all of the best for the quality of life that has made Frisco what it is today? How do you reconcile this in this economy?
Wow. Everyone wants something for nothing. I mean, and I say that not as individuals, but I think as a collective. Hey, if we can get a better deal, we will. I think that's what sales and marketing is all about, is what can I get for less, paying less, or get a better value for spending less. But I think what we need to be careful of is in our community is that there are certain services that our city representatives have come accustomed to seeing. And I think we need to be able to deliver on those. I think that our community is unique in that we provide one heck of a lot of city services to our community at a value that is much greater than the cities that surround us. We need to be very careful moving forward to ensure that we don't get that mentality of an entitlement mentality. But if we do want something, we need to be prepared to pay for it.
Mr. Crowder.
Well, it certainly is that freedom to pursue our self-interest that make our country great and the liberty to do that. And that carries through in terms of the free enterprise system and trying to, if you can build a better mousetrap at a better price and sell it to the marketplace, then you deserve to be compensated for that. I don't think the analogy applies specifically to the city of Frisco in as much as I think we've kind of got the best of both worlds there, that we have the great amenities, we have the greatest city that I know of, and we have one of the lowest tax rates around. So we've been fortunate, a lot of good people contributing, the growth around the community, that success begets success and allows us to have some of those attributes of heaven without having to so-called pay the price. So I think fortunately it's not a problem for the city of Frisco.
Mr. Crowder, this question will be for you, sir. And again, if you can remain on a 30-second response on this question. For those who have been in office, if you could do it over again and change your position as it relates to one budget issue, what would it be and why?
Well, if I quickly comment on in terms of things you learn being on council, that when you come in and even when you campaign, you talk about, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and it's more individual focused. And once you come on board, you realize that's really not the role. It's to work as a collaborative effort along with 5 other members. And I guess I would say in terms of specific budget items, that I would defer more so to the city manager as opposed to early on where we tried to micromanage some of those things, and that's not a specific item, forgive me. But.
Mr. Nelson, this question is specifically for you, sir. For those challenging some of the incumbents and or running on a platform that the city of Frisco has spent too much and or has too much in debt, what 2 or 3 capital projects built in recent years would you not have approved, and how would you have maintained the same quality of life? And I apologize, but 30 seconds, please.
3 seconds each part.
15 seconds each one. Yeah, I'll have to defer answering that whole question in 30 seconds. But what I will say is this. I think that the City Council has made a deliberative effort to make sure that we're getting the best value for the money. I will say is this, is that we need to be very careful when the voters approve the sales of certain bonds. I think we owe the voters a responsibility of only selling those bonds when it's appropriate and not just selling them willy-nilly or immediately based on individual needs or wants.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. This question is for both of you. We'll start with Mr. Nelson. This will be a 1-minute response. As elected officials of the city of Frisco, so Mr. Nelson, act as if you are elected already. Mr. Crowder, you are already elected, sir. As elected officials of the city of Frisco, do you believe that you only represent the residents, or do your constituents also include the local businesses in town? If you'll please go ahead and answer that question, then there'll be a follow-up question to that question. Mr. Nelson, you first, sir.
I don't think there's any question that you owe an obligation to those that not only work here or live here, but those that work here and decide to visit here. I mean, let's face it. You know, as a destination city, we have differences that other what some people would call bedroom communities don't have. I think we have a great mix of individual residents. You know, obviously we're in excess of 120,000, and we have plenty of individual small businesses. And not everyone that's a great business owner here in the city lives in the city. As many of you here, you know, live in the Collin or Little Elm and commute into this city. And you know, you're here for a reason. You're here for a reason because you know Frisco's a great place to work. You know Frisco's a great place to have a business. And I think as an individual representative, you know, you have to hear their needs. You have to understand that there are business concerns. And if you're not representing everyone that works, lives, or plays within the city, I think you're going to find yourself in a bad spot, and our city will suffer because of it.
Mr. Crowder, 1 minute, sir.
Without a doubt, we have to represent the citizens, stakeholders, shareholders, and customers of the city, and those all have to be addressed for the city to work and move forward. We have to have an environment that supports business efforts, which leads to job opportunities for citizens, which leads to revenues, contributions to building out our great city. All of those are most definitely important constituents.
The follow-up, we'll start with you, Mr. Crowder. This will be a 30-second response, and I think we've got a question apt for that time frame. The question is, does Frisco, or have they, gained a reputation of not being business friendly? And if so, how do we help fix that? And if not, how do we prevent that from becoming the perception?
Well, I think Frisco is very business friendly, and I don't think there's any perception otherwise. We have invested heavily in our economic development efforts, supported by funding available for that to make thoughtful and strategic investments in attracting employers that can bring long-term value and jobs to the community. And as long as we continue to do that and elect people that have a understanding of the balance required between business and the citizens, that we'll avoid changing that.
Mr. Nelson, 30 seconds, sir.
I've actually heard otherwise in some ways. I think once your business is here, we have a tendency to be incredibly business friendly. But I think business owners demand a few things. I think they demand predictability, and I think they demand fairness. And where I have not heard that there's a lot of fairness is in regards to businesses just trying to start up, especially along the construction side of things. You know, I have years in the military in vertical and horizontal construction experience, and I've heard that the biggest challenges that some new businesses have had coming here is actually building, getting their businesses set up.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. We'll start with you, Mr. Nelson, on this next question. It'll be a 1-minute response, and then we'll go to you, Mr. Crowder, for the response. The question is, to those folks who have discussed the idea of Exide being out of Frisco, if not possible, that they hit all the proposed regulations being proposed currently to be the cleanest battery recycler in the country, how would you mitigate and replace the effects from the lost jobs, decreased property taxes, and community involvement?
How long?
1 minute's our max, Mr. Nelson. I can't give you more than that. So 1 minute.
Exide's a real challenge. For those of you that don't know, Exide's been here since 1962. Okay, they've been a corporate partner with our community for basically 5 decades. In fact, for those of you that don't know, they were actually given incentives to relocate or to build in Frisco and to come here in the first place. They do do employ hundreds of people. That being said, I also don't believe that Exide is a good match for Frisco at this time. Doesn't mean that they're bad people, and they're a good business partner. Each of you probably own or work for different businesses. But there comes a time where the business has to look at the community in which it's a part of and say, is this a good match? And what I start thinking about is when I talk to some of the leaders at Exide, is that ultimately they're prepared to spend millions of dollars to make sure that they remediate some of the challenges with their facility in order to meet emissions requirements. Well, why not look at this as a business opportunity from the city and look at investing in potential relocation and potentially reutilizing or repurposing that land?
Mr. Crowder, 1 minute, sir.
Well, clearly nothing is more important than the health and safety of the citizens, and to the extent there's a threat, which we've learned more about over time from lead emissions at the Exide plant, we've got to address it. We have worked diligently, and my position has been that we will do everything we can to either ensure that they are in compliance or that they need to leave and shut down. We're pursuing every track available. Some of those ideas that we've discussed with council in executive session, others are publicly available. To the question about should they leave, how do we replace that? The good news is 50 years ago when they came to the city, they were a dominant employer contributor. The good news is at this point, at 120,000 people in a diverse business community, I think it's less material in terms of any loss that they would be contributing.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. We'll start with you, sir. This will be the last question. It'll be a 30-second question. Some people have mentioned that this year's council and mayoral races come down to an issue of vision. What does vision mean to you, and what sort of time frame does vision encompass to you as it relates to the future of Frisco?
Well, to me, the vision of Frisco, which started many years ago with leadership of prior mayor, Mayor Simpson and others that took the city from a place as a small town, maybe somewhat remote, to a much greater city, a place where we all wanted to live. It attracted us some 8 years ago. We moved here with our family, not just because of any particular amenity or aspect of that, but that can-do spirit. And my idea of the vision of Frisco is to achieve great things by working together, which attracts good people that want to contribute to that and see the synergy, and I'm out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. Yeah, 30 seconds comes fast. Mr. Nelson, 30 seconds, sir.
Vision is sometimes difficult to define, especially when you have so many individuals. We're at a position now where we have 120,000 residents in Frisco. That's not to include those that come to work in Frisco that live outside of it. My guess is there's 120,000 plus visions of Frisco. I think the challenge that a representative that is before you is, I think his big or her biggest challenge is to try to represent and listen to the different visions that each person has and molding that into a vision that makes sense for our future. Me personally, we're less than half built out at this point, and I think we have the best in front of us.
Okay, Mr. Nelson, we will start with you on the closing remarks. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I think, in closing, I want to thank, obviously, all of you for being here today. For those of you that work for larger corporations and you were supposed to be at work at 8 and you're making up some kind of excuse to get there late, we really appreciate that. For those that own your own businesses or independent, thank you especially for taking this time away from that, because time is money, most definitely. I think it's important, when you're making an important choice here. Ultimately, this is a job interview. We are going to be reporting to you. And I think you need to find that person that's going to be energetic, the person that's going to be innovative, the person that's going to listen not only to those that agree with them, but those that disagree with them, and try to find those right answers. I mean, these are the challenges that you deal with as individual business owners and work for different corporations. These are the challenges that you have to deal with on a daily basis. This is what you struggle with. And your representative should do nothing less than to make that same challenge in struggling through the decision-making process. The military has a very specific military decision-making process called the MDMP, and rather than bore you through that process, it's a very deliberate and methodical way of going about things. And I think that, if someone's just coming up here and saying, well, I think this or I think that, or if they give you a different answer at one place than another, or they represent you in one way, speaking with you as an individual versus, on the council, I think that you have every right to call them out and say, well, wait a minute, what exactly am I getting? If you're hiring, wouldn't you expect that the person that you interviewed is the same person that represents you? I think that that's important. I've been fortunate in that, for the last 4 years especially, I've been very involved and on the campaign trail. I feel so blessed that I've been unanimously endorsed by the Frisco Firefighters Association, the Frisco Police Officers Association, and many other community groups. And I think what that comes down to is I think they understand that my desire is not to represent myself. My desire is not to represent any special interests. It's to represent the city, and that's something that's greater than any one individual. And so that I hope if you give me the time and that I'll be able to earn your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Crowder, 2 minutes, sir.
Well, thank you also. Thank you for being here. It's been a pleasure to serve you on the Frisco City Council the last 3 years. I think it's been a successful period. I'm proud of our efforts over that time. Much of that success was navigating the economic challenges which none of us could have foreseen 3 years ago. But the good news is we're on the backside of that. Things are looking up. Our economic development prospects are great. Just last night we saw updates on an incredible number of projects, more than we've ever seen, some of amazing quality, and I'm really positive. I'm bullish on the city of Frisco. Always happy to be here, but I think our future looks brighter than ever. And in terms of just to contrast some of my decision making, I don't think you want to have a dogmatic decision tree on how you do things as much as you want to bring people who have the instincts and the business acumen to assess and to make decisions based on that particular point in time and the information as it becomes available. It's a very dynamic world out there, and new information comes at us all the time. In terms of endorsements, I would note that I was endorsed by the only group out there that actually did a competitive interview process, the Collin County Association of Realtors, and so I think I put more stake in that than any other, and we can talk offline about some of the merits and things that I think go into the rationale for other assessments. But staying focused, I look forward to the future. I feel good about Frisco. I welcome your support, and let's do great things together. Thank you.
If you'll give the candidates a big round of applause, please. Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you both.